Hi guys, I've been playing a bit around with Blender this time, and I've been trying to make a fairly quick tree. Again, just kind of like not too heavily detailed. These are kind of built for mainly testing, and with a bit more work they can be turned into game models. Anyway, I thought I'd just go over a quick way of the way that I found to make trees, and we'll end up with something like this. We'll actually use the skin modifier, which is pretty cool. And yeah, it seems like it's really built for building trees with it. So anyway, I'll open up Blender and just with a new scene, I'll delete the starting cube and I'll just add a plane and make sure that's at 0, 0, and I'll just add a skin modifier to that. And if you don't know the skin modifier already, what it basically does is it takes all the lines and it turns the lines into mesh, and we can use that to fairly quickly make a tree. So what I'll do is I'll go into edit mode by pressing tab, and I shall, the one with the dotted lines around it is the root node when you've got the skin modifier being used. So I'll just put that at 0, 0 because I'll have that as the kind of the base of the tree, and I'll have the base of the tree at 0, 0 just because it's always good to have stuff zeroed. And I will select these two vertices and I'll just delete them. And because this is a tree, we're not really going to be using anything symmetrical, and I'm not really going to worry too much about making anything precise because trees are fairly non-precise. They're a bit all over the place, as we probably know. We're going to be making an oak tree, something along the lines of an oak tree, but you can build all kinds of stuff using similar methods. But anyway, I'll just build off some branches. I'll make it so that there's a main trunk, and then I'll build off one branch here, and then up here I'll just build off 2 more branches. And yeah, already we can see that using the skin modifier is really awesome for making trees. Like we can very easily just move them around and decide exactly how we want our structure. And I just toggle in and out of, I just hit Z on and off to find the actual vertices, because you kind of have to guess where they are if you're clicking them without being in wireframe mode. So I just jump into wireframe mode and I'll select these 2 and I'll hit, I think it's Control A. Yeah, Control A just is kind of like scale for the width of each of these vertices. And I actually won't spend too much time on that for now. I'll make an object for, like a separate object for the brush. So I'll just tab out of edit mode back into object mode. I'll hit space, and I want to add a sphere. I'll add an icosphere because I like them, and also because the mesh isn't all kind of centered on one point, because we don't want a whole stack of vertices up the top and the bottom. We kind of want vertices fairly evenly distributed over the whole thing. So I'll make this a bit bigger. I'll just hit tab to go into it. I always like to make sure that the object scale is 1, 1, 1, and yeah, I like to do all my scaling within the object. That just makes it a bit better when you're bringing it into Unity or whichever 3D program you're using, if you're bringing it into something else. So I'll just hit S to scale. I'll scale that up a bit. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the UV maps for this now, before I go scaling it all over the place, or before I go altering it too heavily. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to get the bottom, because I want the top to be nice. I'm just going to put a bunch of cuts in the bottom like this, so it'll unwrap it kind of like a star. I'll just select, oh, I shouldn't have done that, Control Z. While I've got those selected, I need to press Control E and mark the seams. And we can see they're showing in red, which means they're marked as seams. And if I hit U and unwrap, if you don't have this window already here, then you select one of your windows and choose UV image editor. But yeah, anyway, after you've unwrapped, your image should appear here, and that looks pretty good. Nothing's overlapping one another, and yeah, it's pretty good for a sphere anyway. So now that that's unwrapped, I'll make a few changes to it. I'll just move that into place a bit more. I might just hide the tree for now and scale this up a bit. Actually, I'll bring the tree back in. Actually, I'll just leave that as a sphere for now, and what I'll do, I'll tab to get back out of edit mode, and I'll add a displace modifier. What this does is it pushes all the vertices in a certain direction. I'm going to add a new texture, which the default texture will be a cloud texture. So yeah, this will just kind of, it'll be random by default. And we can just play with the strength. We don't want it to be too crazy like that, so I'll make the strength. Yeah, maybe about 2. Looks good. And we'll be putting a subdivision modifier on all this stuff later, but we'll just get the general layout of it right now. So now that that's there, we'll just go back to the trunk, hit tab to go back into it, press Z to go into wireframe mode, and maybe I'll just make this so that the trunk's a little bit smaller with Control A. And I'll basically just position these so that they look like they're branches going into the tree mass above. And you can spend as much time on this as you want. You can, if you want, you can make heaps of branches. Like, for example, you could just go like very easily make a fairly complex tree structure, and yeah, just have branches going anywhere. Anyway, that's out of the scope of this tutorial for now. I'll just make a fairly quick tree structure. I'll put one up in the middle. Sometimes you get these faces disappearing, and the best thing to do with that is just toggle, like play around with the position of the vertices. I'm not sure of the best way to actually fix that. Also, if you toggle change the scale, then that sometimes helps. Anyway, so I'll just roughly position this. I'll see if marking loose is any good. No, it's not. Marking loose is something you can do that makes it so that it kind of, maybe if I do mark loose, like if you mark loose, I don't know how properly to just describe it. The best way is just to see it, but if you mark loose, then it makes that vertice not so tight. I suppose that's a fairly self-explaining explanation. Anyway, so no, I won't be marking that. Anyway, I've got everything more or less where I want it, just for something quick like this. I'll just scale down the ends. And yeah, that's not too bad. Maybe. Cool. And I'll just make some root system as well, so that that actually goes into the ground. One thing I've found, when you extrude the root comes with it, so you need to reset the root, because yeah, each time you do this it'll just drag it out somewhere else. So I'll just do a few roots and then mark this as the root. That might be a bit confusing, considering those two roots have different meanings, but hopefully you'll follow. Anyway, I'll select the ends of all these roots and just scale them down with Control A. I'll scale on the Z-axis 0, which is something that I do fairly often, just so that they're all on the same kind of plane. I might just actually add a plane just for the sake of reference, and make it 10 by 10. Okay, that's not looking too bad. I'll just subdivide this one, because I'll make another little branch off. And yeah, there we go. That can be the rough. So we've got a vertice disappeared here. And I'll just fix that up by just moving stuff around till it works. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Now we'll put a bit of textures onto it. I'll add a subdivision surface modifier, just so these are a bit smoother. And I'll also get this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth both of them. Just type in smooth and we'll shade the smoothing on it. You can see straight away, like it just kind of, it takes off the harsh edges. You can't do it with a skin modifier applied, so I shall just apply that modifier and jump in and shade smooth that, so that looks kind of smooth as well. This just helps as well when we're baking and stuff like that. So I'll just make a material for this. I'll just call that tree top. I'll make the base color for it green. That'll do. And I'll add a texture. I'll change this to okay, yeah, I'll just render it a few times so that I can see what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this from clouds, I'm going to change it to Musgrave that's kind of what I want. And I'll make it so that it's a dark green. And I'll just hit F12 to render that. That's kind of what we want, but the dark green is too big and too large. I'll just reduce the size of it so it's smaller. Hit F12 so it's a bit smaller, but we don't want it to be so heavy, so we'll reduce the intensity, and that's more like what I want. Yeah, that's pretty decent. And I will also chuck on another just clouds, but this one, instead of altering the color, I'll make it alter the normals, which means it pushes out like that. I'll make that one a bit bigger, just so that it doesn't look like a completely flat surface. And this won't add a huge effect, but yeah, a little bit is nice. Actually, I might make it a little bit stronger just by increasing that, and just render. Yeah, it's not too bad. That'll do for the leaves for now. I'll just change this back to UV image editor. I'll actually make because to actually put the image down onto something, I'll just quickly bake this as I'm going. Baking means it takes the material stuff and it puts it all onto one image, which is really good for if you want to use that in a computer game, just so that you have everything on one image and you can have it all in all kinds of crazy materials inside of the editor, and then just bake it when you're ready to bring it into whatever your 3D engine is. So I'll just make a new texture. I'll just go with all the defaults, and I will just go into the render panel, expand the bake drop down and hit the bake key. That's baked using the light, but I don't really want to use the light because it'll take forever to set up lights. I'm just going to use ambient occlusion. What ambient occlusion is it's not technically lighting, but it's kind of fake lighting that it shoots a lot of rays in a whole lot of directions to kind of almost simulate how much light would be hitting a point if there was light coming from all directions. I'll just hit bake, and that's looking a lot better. We can see on the texture pretty much the whole thing is filled with color, like we didn't have like all of the shade like we had before, and that's all from the ambient occlusion adding light to it. You can't see it a lot in the viewport, but that's okay. It's just in the viewport, it's just being lit by this one light, so we don't have to worry too much about what it looks like there, as long as it looks proper here. And I'll just save that to disk by doing save as image, and I'll call it treetop and just hit enter. And so we've got that saved, and we'll just tab out of that, and we can see when we tab out the displace modifier, like we've still got the texture, and it doesn't distort too badly as long as we don't distort the displacement modifier too badly. Anyway, that's not looking too bad. And we'll do the same kind of thing with the tree trunk. This one, because the topology is kind of a bit crazy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a smart UV project and just go with the defaults. Add a new texture for that, call it trunk, and apart from that just go with the defaults. and I'm just going to go over and just hit the bake button, and well, we haven't given any texture to it yet, so that's fairly good considering there's no texture. We'll just, oh, there's no material at all. I'll add a material, call it trunk. I'll make it fairly dark brown, and I'll add a texture on top of that. And I'll use the actual wood texture, it's there for a reason. I'll just change the color to a much lighter brown. About there is good. A little bit darker though. And we will make it so it's band noise. Band noise should be good. Actually, I might use hard clouds, because wood texture is more for if you have something that's cut out of wood, but clouds will be a lot better for bark type of stuff, and I think that's what I use somewhere else as well. And I will also turn on normal, so that as we can see in the preview there's already a few bumps on it, and if I do a render, hopefully at the bottom, can't see it too well. I'll just move the camera down a bit so I've got a bit of a better view. Yeah, we can see kind of little bumps on that. You can always spend a lot more time with texturing, but yeah, I'm just giving you the rough tools that you need to know. So now that we have a texture on that, we just click that. So we've got that selected, and we just hit the bake button, and that bakes our tree texture. And yeah, so we'll just save that, save as image, tree trunk, and there we have a fairly quick tree that is ready to be brought into a 3D engine, and it's also ready to have a bit more time spent on it. You could go into here and collapse the modifier, and then just go into sculpt mode and then sculpt it around a little bit. You can obviously spend a lot more time on the tree making branches and all kinds of stuff. It depends on how much time you really want to spend on it. I did do another one a little bit earlier that I spent a little bit more time on. I don't think the textures have come onto this, so I'll just quickly bake them. And that's one of the good things about having everything set up in materials. You can just bake it whenever you want. And these seams that you see there, because I'm rendering it at a different level of subdivision than the one I'm displaying it at. Like my preview is at 1, if I set my preview to 4, then everything's nice. And yeah, we can see that this is one that I've built a few more branches on, and I've also did a bit of sculpting on the actual tree itself. But yeah, anyway, that's one of the things you can do with the skin modifier in Blender, and I hope even if you're not actually building trees, you hopefully learned something from this tutorial. Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, etc. Thanks for watching. Cheers.